Welcome to the second panel of the Bioelectronic Medicine Briefing Series. I'm your host, Eric Olander. This is a new virtual event series on the future of bioelectronic medicine, featuring the field's top experts and innovators. Now, bioelectronic medicine is one of the most innovative fields in healthcare, with perhaps one of the greatest opportunities to grow and deliver new solutions to patients. How can companies, research centers, experts, and others in the field work together to achieve this potential? How can they speak with a unified voice to win over physicians, payers, regulators, investors, and other key external audiences? The Alliance for Advancing Bioelectronic Medicine created this briefing series to explore these very questions. Now, the Alliance is an independent network of professionals dedicated to innovation at the intersection of healthcare and technology. It brings together leaders and companies from across the field of bioelectronic medicine, including neuromodulation, EP, and other key subfields. Our goal here is to create a unique platform for collaboration, stakeholder engagement, and public positioning beyond just technical and scientific issues. Now, this briefing series will feature discussions on these topics and a lot more. For our second panel today, we'll discuss the bold research advances and emerging technologies that aim to expand bioelectronic medicine's potential to help more patients. We're going to dive into the most fascinating and leading edge developments in this field, like neural biomarkers, brain-machine interfaces, and so much more. We are so thrilled to have three leading voices to help us walk through these topics. Emil Huij is the CEO of the Bios Health company. Good afternoon to you in Cambridge, Emil.
Thanks, Eric. Hi, great to meet everyone. As you said, I'm the CEO of Bios Health, and we use AI and neural interfaces to read and write on the nervous system in real time. And so for us, it's a platform technology which we hope acts as infrastructure to speed up bioelectronics development and make them better, faster, and sort of ultimately cheaper and more available.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us. And Jorn Rickett also joins us from Europe. He's in Freiburg, Germany. He's the CEO of Cortec. A very good afternoon to you, Jorn.
Good afternoon from Freiburg in Germany. I'm a neuroscientist by training, and I founded Cortec 10 years ago because technology was missing to continue and really make progress in my research in bioelectronic medicine and brain-computer interfaces by that time. And now for 10 years, Cortec has been developing and manufacturing implantable technology for the communication with the brain and the nervous system. And most of our resources went into a technology that we call brain interchange, which is actually an implant that is designed to record and stimulate the brain continuously, wirelessly, and it's driven by AI. So the externalized processing allows the use of proper algorithms to really drive a system and make use of the data and all the additional information that's there. And for us, this is a platform for neurotherapy discovery that can be used in a wide range of applications. And for Cortec, it is relevant that we also manufacture. So this is a system which we can configure and adapt, and we do this in our own clean rooms here in Freiburg.
Okay.
And I'm happy to be here and dig with you into this field.
Wonderful. Well, we're looking forward to diving into that more. And our last guest, all the way from sunny Los Angeles, California. Very good morning to you, D.A. Wallach, who's a general partner and co-founder of Time Bioventures.
Great to be here, Eric, and Jorgen and Emil, great to meet you guys. I'm the sort of idiot in this room, so to speak. I'm a mere investor, and yet one who's very excited about this field of bioelectronic medicine. Obviously, Jorgen and Emil have been on this for a while now, but it seems that the world is just starting to wake up to the possibilities of this new frontier in medicine. And I'm a very proud investor in two companies so far in this space, one called Biosig and the other Neuralink. And looking to do more. So I'll be thrilled to learn in this conversation what you guys have on your minds.
We're very glad that you're here to join us, and also to diversify out the panel a little bit, so we do have different perspectives here. Now, in this discussion today, we want to explore the most disruptive technologies in bioelectronic medicine. And we actually also want to look ahead to where the field is going and where it may end up in the long term. So let's start with the general question for each of you. And Jorn, I'll start with you. What bioelectronic medicine application are you most excited about right now?
Yeah, I think there are two fields. One is in the peripheral nervous system, large diseases like inflammatory diseases and hopefully also diabetes. And then it's in the central nervous system. It is neuropsychiatric disorders, network dysfunctions, depression, schizophrenia, that hopefully can be treated with bioelectronic medicine.
Emil, let's go to you now. What are you most excited about?
Yeah, so at BIOS, we have this vision around neural digital therapies. So any therapy that can be informed by an insight you get from the nervous system in real time. So when it comes to our nervous system, any medicine is basically a stab in the dark, and you have no way to tell if a drug or stimulation is working in a quantifiable way. And I think when you then think about the bioelectronic industry, this is a huge problem. This is a kind of existence skating problem. So, if after a few months, a clinician or a patient or both cannot tell if their treatment is working, you're essentially not going to get uptake. And we're seeing that already in the sense that we have massive clinical trials that failed and continue to fail because of sort of basic setup issues. This is after the sort of the huge battles you have at discovery level to figure out what signals you can create. And then it's only going to continue when you then get into the day-to-day life of trying to prescribe these and to reimburse them. So, while you can use insights from the nervous system in conventional drugs, the real breakthrough is if you can develop a bioelectronic as a neural digital therapy. So for us, we're really focused on kind of showing rather than telling, and trying to do that in a particular disease area that has been, a terrible commercial success for both drugs and new innovations on many modalities, which is heart disease. And I think that's a good place for us to show where bioelectronics is really well primed to take a lot of share if it breaks those barriers. But also what we see with our partnerships is that same desire to use this neural digital therapy approach exists across a whole range of peripheral and central nervous system mediated diseases.
DA, as an investor, you see the industry in a slightly different way than our other two friends on the panel here. And you see the bigger picture in the sense of, where is the greatest potential for the disruption to occur that can improve care for patients? Tell us how you see it and what the big potential is here.
Yeah, well, certainly disruption is one way of thinking about it, in the sense that perhaps, yes, we might be able to replace existing approaches to modifying certain diseases with more sophisticated bioelectronic approaches. But I think by and large, I think of this as a whole new space for medicine, one that would be additive to what we've already accomplished over the past 100 years, really, in manipulating the biochemical pathways of human physiology. So I think what's so interesting at a conceptual level, just sort of as a starting point, is that we've built just an enormously successful industry, successful both in terms of its financial results and in terms of its impact on human health in, again, manipulating biochemical human physiology. And that is the pharmaceutical industry. And yet evolution gave us this whole parallel and integrated system, which is the electronic system. And of course, they work together, but yet we have dramatically under-indexed on understanding how the body's electronic system operates. And that's, most obvious in the brain, which is just still such an unexplored frontier. But, as Jörg pointed out, our electronic signaling, is everywhere and interacts in very interesting ways with the immune system, with the gut, with obviously peripheral tissues. And so, I think we're just starting to open this door. And that's what's exciting to me, because you can imagine the possibility that over the next 50 or 100 years, what we see is that bioelectronic medicine as a field becomes the appropriate counterpart that it should be, probably, to the pharmaceutical industry that's been built over the past 100 years.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. Well, let's dive into each of your stories a little bit more, and your vantage points. Emil, I'm going to start with you. And as I understand it, Bios Health is a pioneer in using artificial intelligence to identify digital neural biomarkers, essentially the language of the nervous system. You're then applying that knowledge to explore how to improve treatment for chronic conditions, especially cardiovascular diseases. So with that in mind, I've got two questions for you that I'd like to start and open our discussion with. Why is this technology so important now? And when you're describing it to investors and physicians and other non-technical audiences, how do you frame it in such a way that feels both compelling, but at the same time achievable? Okay, so a bunch of questions in there, but get us started there, Emil.
No, thanks, Eric. Yeah, so first of all, I'd say, lack of data and insight is a huge barrier for this industry, and we're trying to solve that problem, and directly at that sort of real-time nerve level. I'll come back to the relevance of that as I kind of try to explain that when we speak to people like investors, many are still grappling with the potential. You can get the vision that if you could scale, medicine at the speed of software, at the distribution kind of breadth and depth of a functioning bioelectronic ecosystem, you could change the world. You could have that entire counterpart to the entire pharmaceuticals industry, built overnight at sort of tech scale and tech speed. But we have to sort of show first basic elements of that building block that people can understand. So, for instance, if we take the analogy of the first major foundation of precision medicine, DNA, applying data and AI to DNA transformed medicine, right? And we basically think that unlocking the nervous system will be a next big breakthrough. But it takes an awful lot of work to show what that could really mean. The foundations that were laid for genomics, we took a long time to discover where we could do valuable things on top, where people would start to use that data. What we believe is that when it comes to bioelectronics, it's about saving money, saving time, and having better trial success as you create these bioelectronics. And for us, our journey is to create a usable set of insights that mean that those who are discovering new bioelectronic treatments have a quick way of discovering those. And we now have this great partnership with NIH Spark, where they're using our tools to do just that. But then when we come to trying to pick the right patients to trial with, can we give a language that a clinician and a patient can understand about when their nervous system is ready or responding to a treatment? And that common thread is a machine-created language, which we call these sort of these digital biomarkers that can be used on the nervous system. And so for us in the long run, that speed and scale will all hang off a kind of personal neural profile, and that the language that's being written in are the first biomarkers that are being discovered. And so that for us is a bit of trying to make that sort of big impact real very, very slowly, but ultimately with big foundations being laid that we hope is infrastructure for the market to scale on top.
And you guys are also working with the tech company NVIDIA, and the fact that you're in Cambridge, you're also collaborating closely with the University of Oxford and a number of different other experts in that area. And there's a lot of exciting things going on in the Cambridge area. Talk to us a little bit about what it's like working with NVIDIA and how, a well-established company like that, especially in the tech field, opens up possibilities that we're going to see more cross-pollination with large tech companies in bioelectronic medicine in the future.
Yeah, firstly, I have to say NVIDIA has been incredible to work with. I think because they come from that background of empowering, video game developers and letting people create value on top. We had access to their leadership really early on. And now Mona Flores, who's the kind of global head of medical AI, is on our advisory panel, sitting alongside, professors Tim Dennison and David Patterson from Oxford. So we're getting that kind of collaboration at a cross-sector level, and that's kind of key to move the needle for the industry in any space. And the fact that they're doing that with our program, with our projects, we think is a major enabling factor for our journey. And so for us, we realized that the entire bioelectronic industry and those discovering treatments and then translating them will ultimately achieve far more impact than we can alone. So we believe that we have to take a platform approach, to co-create tools with those who can discover the treatments and those who already know how to trial them, but to bring in these partners from spaces like the tech industry who can teach us how to scale them and to make the tools easier to use, and to also crack the sort of user experience, right? So when people are buying healthcare like software, they're going to do it in Netflix type ways. We're gonna and that is learning that can be ported across by just opening yourself up to collaborate. And that's sort of why we think that the tech companies have a stake in this game and could really help build a really great future very quickly. And that's why I also think in an inevitable sense it's an enormous form of value that they could unlock next. But luckily for a lot of us, biology contains far more complexity than the tech space. So we can collaborate quite openly with the tech players and then try and sit there and unpack a bit of complexity for them to play with, and then be trusted by the clinical community to do that in an ethical way and an effective way, and in a way where we could be in charge of saying, is this treatment really working or not, or is there something that we need to do for that person's health that maybe the kind of the creative and quite disruptive and fast scaling tech stuff just needs to rely on us for that signal. So that being that barrier, being that sort of interface is very important as well.
Yeah, so DA, what Emil's saying must actually sound quite familiar to you in terms of the intersection between the biosciences and big tech. You've invested in a wide range of industries and companies, including SpaceX, Spotify, and Neuralink, and you're now focused specifically on the life sciences with your firm BioVentures Time. So given this experience that you've got, what opportunities attracted you to the bioelectronic medicine field specifically?
Sure. Well, it is not something that I'm drawn to specifically because I've got a background in software investing. I think, in many cases, the sort of analogy, as Emil alluded to, between software and the way that living systems work is a bit overstated. Complexity is a good word. And it's probably an understatement when most people use it to describe what we're dealing with when it comes to human disease. And so I think, you have to go into a field like bioelectronic medicine with a great deal of humility and an openness to the possibility that nature is communicating electronically in ways that were not designed to be understood. This is certainly what we see in other areas of biology. So, computer code, as a general rule, is really good when the engineers who wrote it did so in a way that other engineers could look at and go, okay, I see what they were trying to do there, and this structure makes sense. Evolution, on the other hand, has produced biological systems that are extremely efficient and elegant from an engineering standpoint, but are highly inscrutable, usually. And so, as we start to try and understand, this sort of language, so to speak, that the body's electronic systems are utilizing, we have to recognize that it could take decades for us to really interpret them with a high level of granularity. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't walk down that road. And it seems like that's exactly what Emil and other entrepreneurs in this emerging field are doing. So, we go into it with our eyes open, but with the view that there is a lot to be learned. And as we learn things incrementally, we can leverage that learning to produce interventions. Think about pacemakers or deep brain stimulation devices as a starting point. I mean, these are very blunt instruments. They're basically delivering a really, big signal without a lot of precision. And you might analogize them to first generation chemotherapies in the case of cancer. So if you think about what's happened in cancer treatment, we went from basically, cut it out, burn it, kill all the tissue with a very blunt drug, to now having, as Emil was speaking to, the diagnostics that allow you to understand a patient's disease in a very precise way, and then treatments that can intervene in that disease in as precise a way, target the specific genetic mutations that are driving cell proliferation. Now, in the case of these sorts of diseases, when we talk about heart failure, when we talk about neurodegenerative illnesses, when we talk about seizure, we are starting with these very blunt instruments that can kind of shock electronic systems into some sort of normal function. But, I think the analogy is appropriate, because what you can imagine is that going forward, we'll get more and more precise in our ability to recognize what's not working and to just try to fix or address that specific dysfunction. In the case of Biosig, the company I mentioned, what we are trying to do there is simply give electrophysiologists in a cath lab a much cleaner signal to work with when they're doing procedures like cardiac ablation. So, again, cardiac ablation is a really interesting intervention that seemingly has produced some significant benefits for patients with AFib. But, notwithstanding how thoughtful and well-trained electrophysiologists are, they are operating sort of with blindfolds on. And so, just allowing them to understand what they're looking at in the heart with a greater level of clarity can advance that type of procedure. And so it's this type of incremental, gradual improvement. Hopefully in the future, as we were talking about before, there can be some massive breakthroughs that allow this to move at the speed of software. But I think right now we're just taking the first steps into this new frontier.
And what do you think, as an investor, the scale of the potential is here? I mean, you've invested in SpaceX or Spotify. Is it the potential there to create companies on that scale?
Oh, I think absolutely. The scale of any market opportunity really starts with the size of the problem you're trying to fix. And unfortunately, some of the conditions that may be amenable to this type of understanding, these types of interventions, are still the biggest unmet medical needs in the world. Heart disease, atherosclerosis, neurodegenerative diseases. In many of these cases, we don't even understand how the diseases operate, how they progress, what's driving them, what their true causes are. So, we've got a huge amount of work cut out for us. And I think as creative entrepreneurs, make progress, even small progress in these huge markets, even those incremental advancements can be extremely valuable.
Yeah. Very quickly, I'm just curious, while I have you, since you're an investor, and we'll have quite a few bioelectronic medicine companies representatives looking at this show, can you give them any advice for what they should do in order to how to win over investors and how to get your attention? Because raising money is a big challenge in this space.
Yeah, well, look, I would maybe just take further what we were just talking about, which is this sort of tension between big, lofty, generational ambitions, true revolutions in medicine, and this as a field has that potential, of course. And then on the other hand, incremental practical wins for patients and the ability to ship products. And so what we look for very often in a company is that these two mindsets are operating in parallel. In other words, there is a sort of North Star, a big, ambitious vision that may take decades to achieve. And it's that vision that is attracting really smart people to come and join a company and think of it as an environment where they could really see themselves building their career and inventing for decades to come. And then at the same time, there has to be a vision for how you actually ship products that meet a customer need in a reasonable time frame, like 2 to 5 years. As venture investors, the way we think, and other investors think differently, is when we're making an investment, we want to believe that we could generate a great return in 3 to 5 years. But we also want to believe that if things are going well, that investment is one you'd actually want to hold for 50 years. And the great companies have that quality. You know, so if you were an early investor in Google, not too long into their journey, AdWords came about. And, you know, they are now starting that and continuing today sit on one of the most lucrative ATM machines that has ever existed in the world. I mean, AdWords just spits out money forever. And then because they did that hard work of establishing a foothold product that actually makes money, that actually meets customer demand, that gives them the right financially and in principle to go and explore all these amazing next generation possibilities for their business in healthcare and in defense and in robotics and whatever. So we love companies that have this quality. They're doing something practical that people want to pay for, but they're going to use the money that they make in doing that to figure out how they can grow the business forever. And that's, you know, that's the sort of magic formula, I think.
Okay, well, let's look at one of those businesses that's trying to do that. Jorn, CoreTech designs and produces a wide range of products from neurotechnology like custom-made electrodes, as well as the CoreTech Brain One, Interchange One, a complete system for recording and stimulating the nervous system. Taking into account what we've heard today, especially from DA, what's your long-term vision for CoreTech?
Yeah, I'll come to that, but I would really like to follow up on what Emil and DA said.
Yeah.
And that is about unlocking the neural code or understanding the brain. Because we currently don't know a lot about essential functions and how they work. And that is exactly where we've built the brain interchange system for. It is designed for making this possible, unlocking this code. And because the brain is highly plastic, it adapts, it changes, it is a learning system by itself. Now, when you want to use AI that is also a learning system by itself, you have two learning systems that are, as DA said, totally different. Now, a brain can be described in a certain way as a computer, but it's a radically different computer, massively parallel, built by evolution for a certain species. And then you have a computer, and they are very different. And to learn how these two can communicate, including this adaptation, that is very important, and that is what will help us, what will bring us the data, and then allow us to really develop these diseases and therapies. And that's actually the vision of CoreTech, is to use the system and to drive therapeutic research, not for a single indication, but for many indications. And so we want to do this on the one hand with the leading academic partners, clinicians and researchers, to really find out the therapeutic mechanisms, and then really develop and get approval for new therapies together with industry partners. So that in the long-term vision, many new therapies are coming out that have been discovered with the help of our technology. And a hope is there that there will be therapies who actually relieve symptoms, but there are increasing hints that if you push the brain to help itself, for example, by moving a limb again that has not been moved before, by electrical stimulation or even an orthosis or prosthetic, that the brain learns again how to move. So that in the end, there could not only be relief of symptoms, but actual regeneration in the future. But in order to understand all this, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, that we were just talking to DA about the idea of the perspective from the private sector. You have a partnership with the NIH Brain Initiative, and so which is obviously in the public sector. Can you talk to us a little bit about the public-private partnership potential?
Yeah, I mean that's a fantastic initiative, and these are fantastic grants that we are essentially missing here over in Europe. So that's exactly the mechanism that you need to accelerate the clinical research in this field, and that really enables this type of research. And we are just starting there. So we're very grateful for this initiative. And I think that in order to move this field forward, you need, on the one hand, the technology that really enables long-term recording and long-term studying of the interaction with the brain. And then you need the researchers who have the academic knowledge, the daring clinicians who move forward with the therapies, and then you need funding. And it's great to have visionary investors here, but I think it's also very important to have public funding to push the field forward. There are many diseases that can really benefit and move this field forward, but that have rather small numbers of patients. Take, for example, brain-computer interfaces, which is a very exciting technology. But if you want to start out with the first patients who are in dire need of help here, these are those totally locked in patients. They are very few. So that's not an actual investment case, except if you believe that this technology and what you learn with these patients allows you to develop the next generation therapies and other products.
It's just so interesting to hear. One of the themes of our discussion today is the importance of partnerships, whether it's NVIDIA or the National Institutes of Health. These partnerships across sectors really do make a very big impact. Emil, very quickly before we go and we wrap up and get our final statements here, I just want to touch on the importance of artificial intelligence. Both you and Jorn and your companies are using artificial intelligence in your solutions. And I just want to get a sense from you of what role AI is going to play and what is the future of AI in bioelectronic medicine in your view?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, based on our sort of entire purpose, we think AI is central to sort of really quantifying and managing that complexity that emerges as we try and hack our sort of electrical system. I think it actually has a role to play in simplifying the tasks we're going to need to do right as we simplify it for clinicians, as we make it possible for a patient to be in control of that experience and choose a bioelectronic option over a therapeutic option, and clearly as we try and regulate and keep population scale users safe. How are we going to respond to those side effects building up, or the devices being used in the wrong way without AI and some technology to handle the data at that scale? And I think to come back to your point around that power of the sort of collaboration in the ecosystem, I think everyone knows that when this works, it will be like mobile technology, where nowadays, okay, we claim the iPhone was kind of obvious, but how did we get there? And also the huge Android ecosystems as well. And really, where we're at today is there are very few companies with the hardware capability that Cortex provide, and we even are customers of Cortex for some of our neural interface hardware. But we're hunting for that moment where the value starts to be created in software, right? Not because the foundations that companies like Cortex provide aren't needed, but because we learn how to make them easy enough that people can use them at scale. So I think that what you need is AI to help you simplify it enough and keep it safe, so that the innovations that have been invested in for frankly decades by companies like Cortex can suddenly get to that point where you could iterate and use it. And that's where we think that unlocking the ability to code it, and where the software is not the freebie on top of the huge and expensive hardware, but suddenly the software is the thing that is justifying the next the next upgrade for the Cortex 12 That's when you're going to start to notice that ecosystems kind of kicked into effect, and AI is the only tool we have that can make that easy on something that's complex.
Jorn, let me just pick up the conversation with you. Besides AI, are there any other enabling technologies that you think will have as much of an impact as artificial intelligence and really helping to drive the field's growth?
I think it's, on the one hand, it's further miniaturization and improved biocompatibility. So if you would get to the point where you have implants that are not rejected by the body or encapsulated by the body, that's an important step where we might already be pretty close to. And then in the end, assuming we have the AI and we have the data, we also, of course, need, but probably that's already there, the wireless capabilities of really accessing this data via the internet and storing all this. And so the other major hurdle that's missing is, again, the science of understanding the mechanisms. With regard to AI, though, I think we are here at a stage where we first need the data. I mean, we are collecting the data, but if you compare it to where we are, where Google is, I mean, they daily get tons of data, whereas here in neuroscience, we are very limited with the amount of data that's gathered. So I would postulate that the one who has the first 10 patients who are running around with implants that really continuously record and send out the data with multiple channels and from different regions, that is giving you a real advantage. And then it's only 10 patients, but these 10 patients, when they are continuously interacting with their implants, that will allow you to learn a tremendous lot. Yeah, but in the end, to really make full use of AI, you need hundreds or thousands of patients, and you need data from different regions of the brain. And not only of the brain, you will need the data that is describing all the environment and the situation, other physiological parameters. And with all that, then you can make the full use of AI.
Okay. Yeah. So miniaturization, AI, and data are the keys to keep an eye on. I'd like to wrap up our discussion with a hypothetical for all of you, and then we'll have a little fun here. Let's say it's the year 2035. What bioelectronic medical technologies are we all using in 15, 20 years from now? And how has the field changed in your view? DA, as a visionary, let's start with you.
My gosh, that's a tall order. You know, again, I view this as something, you know, this whole conversation, what we're talking about in terms of the frontier could take the next century to fully realize. So 15 years is a relatively short period of time. I guess if I had to put money on it, I'm pretty confident that some significant patient populations will have brain devices as a more or less standard treatment. So that would be one. Slightly more speculative would be whether any common, let's call them lifestyle diseases. Now they have many different causes, but take type 2 diabetes. People have speculated that, you know, vagal nerve stimulation and so forth may be able to, you know, help with appetite control and things like this. So there's a possibility that, you know, basic things like appetite and sleep could have almost consumer scale products out there that you know, much wider populations are using, that are essentially non-invasive stimulation devices. So I think, you know, those are two interesting shots on goal that investors like me could take. They're different theses, but they do hinge on the same underlying advancement of the technology.
Okay, Emil, let's go to you. What's your vision for 2035?
Yeah, I mean, just to respond to DA, I think I think for the lifestyle disease side, what we're betting on is that the readout, the personal neural profile, the information your nervous system can give you could be used in an entire pathway for at least one or two of the major lifestyle diseases. And it's because you can already deliver that measurement and that insight on consumer hardware. You can measure the impacts through the biosignals you can pick up, as long as you know what that neural correlate is behind you. So on the one hand, neural biomarkers will be the backbone of decision making and choosing when you need to progress to the therapeutic or to make a lifestyle change, and probably simplifies for then some very concentrated populations. Then the moment you take that invasive choice for a sort of implantable type bioelectronic treatment. I think the other thing that is certain and is happening, and therefore, hopefully, and I say certain and happening by 15 years, I can be right here, is that clinicians will be comfortable prescribing software, where it's software that's changing an implantable choice they made at one point in time, right? So that the supply chain that exists, with the componentry of hardware can be delivered by these sort of big backbone companies, but then a researcher, perhaps in one of these NIH frameworks that we're both participating in, comes up with a new innovation, and that's shipped at the scale of and the speed of software. And a clinician, not too long after, maybe a couple of years later, goes, you know what, I can prescribe this to you, and you have almost all of the right neural hardware for you to benefit, and they prescribe software. And so I think that's the other change. So personal neural profiles that we use widely, and then prescribable software that we use in a very targeted but powerful fashion.
Okay. Jorn, we're going to give you the last word in the discussion today. Take out the crystal ball and tell us what the future looks like.
Okay, so first of all, I hope that we all further learn how to live a healthy life so that most of us don't need medicine. But I'm pretty sure that within 14 years, there will be many more patients who are really suffering from severe diseases that cannot be treated today, that can relieve their symptoms with advanced neural implants, or also non-invasive technology delivering targeted stimulation. So I'm convinced that there will be progress, and 14 years will be enough to lead also to new treatments in neuropsychiatric disorders and improved Parkinson and epilepsy therapies. These therapies will advance to closed loop stages, and these will be controlled by our smartphones. So they'll advance to monitoring implants or non-invasive sensors that on the one hand can give us feedback to our performance in daily life regarding sleep or other functions. But then there will be some people who really have their lives improved by implants that they can control with their smartphones to really adapt the therapies to their momentary needs. And the big hope is that by doing this, as I mentioned, there will also be increasing evidence where these tools are used by the brain, that it learns how to heal itself, so that in the end, you use these devices for a couple of years, and then you can throw them away or boot another software on them, because you have actually regenerated and are able to live without them.
Okay. Emil Hewage, Jorn Rickett, D.A. Wallach, thank you so much for taking the time and for really enlightening us with a fascinating discussion and insights on the trends in this interesting space that's growing so fast. And we want to thank you for joining us for this latest installment of the Bioelectronic Medicine Briefing Series. I'm Eric Olander. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time.